Hello and welcome to this interactive session with Dr. Alp Aslandogan on how dialogue serves social peace, evidence from surveys, statistical data, and brain scan. Alp Aslandogan is the Executive Director of the Alliance for Shared Values, AfSV, a non-profit organization that promotes bringing together citizens of diverse backgrounds around shared values of humanity. Local partners of AfSV focus on interfaith and intercultural dialogue. Prior to his current position, Dr. Aslandogan served as the board president of the Institute of Interfaith Dialogue in Houston, Texas. Dr. Aslandogan is the co-editor of Muslim Citizens of the Globalized World, Contributions of the Gulen Movement, published by the Institute of Interfaith Dialogue and the co-author of The Messenger, Prophet Muhammad and His Life of Compassion, published by Blue Dome. He published columns in CNN, Huffington Post, and FoxNews.com, and serves as a contributing editor for the Fountain magazine and on the board of scholars and practitioners of the Journal of Interreligious Dialogue. He holds a PhD in computer science. You're welcome, Dr. Aslandogan. Thank you so much for joining us so early in the morning. And I request all the participants to keep their camera on throughout this session and microphone off at the moment. But of course, when it comes to you speaking, please turn it on and speak. So over to you, sir.
Before I start, I just want to share a perspective or feeling that I have during the last 5 years. You may know that in Turkey there has been some political troubles. The government and the president has become more and more authoritarian. And Hizmet movement participants, where I belong, many of our friends had to leave the country. Some of them died on their way escaping the country. So technically speaking, we should not have anything to fear in Turkey because we are Sunni Muslim Turks, ethnically Turk and religiously Muslim. And the government, the ruling party does identity politics on that. So their identity politics on Sunni Muslim Turkish identity. So we should not have any fear in Turkey, but we cannot live in Turkey because the leader says, if you are not obedient to me, it doesn't matter who you are. And around him are people who have nothing to do with Turkishness or Muslimness or anything like that. They are just people who pursue their own interests. So obedience is more important than your identity. So after this experience, I began to think like this. When you look at the world map, if you look at the political map, you see the countries and you see the borders and you have different colors. If you were to draw a majority religion world map, you would see colors and borders like majority Muslim, majority Hindu, majority Buddhist, majority Christian, etc. countries. But if you think about people whose lives are driven by hope and the human fraternity and respect, and then think about people whose lives are driven by dominance, greed, disrespect, then you will see that there are no borders, there are no homogeneous colors. It is all around black and white dots. And in that map, there are people in India, in America, in Turkey, in Kyrgyzstan, in Slovenia, in everywhere, who belong to the same group, who are driven by respect and hope and human fraternity. So I consider all of you my brothers and sisters in that sense. So country, ethnicity, religion, at least labeled religion, means so little for me now. I look at what kind of human you are, what kind of human I am, and can we help humanity lift their consciousness as a group. So today our topic is dialogue and civic engagement, whether how they help social peace. Do they help social peace? How do we know? That is my topic. So if I may, Behzat, I'd like to share my presentation.
Yes, I have enabled that feature. You should be able to share your screen.
So let me make this maybe a little bit easier. Okay. Is it easy to see? Is it legible? Okay. So when we talk about dialogue and civic engagement, we talk about our roles, in what roles in society we can engage with other people. Each of us, of course, is first of all, we are a human, and then we are a citizen, we are a neighbor, we are a parent, we are, for me, I'm a Muslim, somebody else is a Hindu or Buddhist or Christian or Jew. We have hobbies like photography or cooking or reading. We are professionals, we have engineering degree or mechanics or teaching degree. So that means for each of us, there are so many fields where we have opportunities to engage with other people and also encourage others to engage with other people. From the perspective of the Hizmet movement, I'll give very brief definitions of dialogue and civic engagement. Dialogue is a meaningful interaction and exchange among people of different ethnic, social, cultural, political, religious backgrounds, ideological backgrounds, through various kinds of conversations and activities, without imposing their ideas, beliefs, or values upon others, in an atmosphere of equality, tolerance, honesty, openness, sincerity, and courtesy. This is how we understand dialogue within the Hizmet movement. And by this definition, we also mean or imply that dialogue is not a conversion effort. It is not debate. It's not showing that you are right and the other side is wrong. It is not a compromise from one's religion, and it is not an effort to unify religions. So what dialogue is and what dialogue is not. And in dialogue, our friends engage in activities, and probably you do too, visiting each other's worship places, having family dinners, iftars, or other celebrations, having guided conversation dinners, luncheons, breakfast, book clubs, meetings, panels, workshops, seminars, symposiums, academic events, domestic or international trips, and social responsibility projects. Some examples of dialogue. Now, when we turn to civic engagement, it is defined in different ways in different contexts. I'll just give you a few definitions and see if you can spot some common traits here. In Encyclopedia Britannica, it is defined as a broad set of practices and attitudes of involvement in social and political life of the country or society that converge to increase the health of democratic society. In another definition, the process of connecting individuals in a society with one another to share common interests and work for the common good. American Psychological Association defines it as individual and collective actions designed to identify and address issues of public concern. You might be familiar with Dr. Ashutosh Varshney from Brown University, who did studies in civic engagement. He defines two forms of civic engagement. One of them he calls associational or institutional. The other one is an everyday engagement. Under associational and institutional engagement, he gives the examples of business associations. So people of different backgrounds, Hindus and Muslims, or Buddhists and Christians, becoming active in business associations, professional organizations, reading clubs, film clubs, sports clubs, non-profit organizations, trade unions, even political parties. And in everyday associations or civic engagement, families from different communities visiting each other, eating together, jointly participating in each other's festivals, allowing their children to play together and playing sports together. And you can add other examples to these. In Youth.gov, which is an initiative of the United States federal government and many institutions, they define civic engagement with 4 constructs: civic action, civic community or duty, civic skills, and social cohesion. So civic action or participation in activities such as volunteering or service learning to help better the community, civic commitment or duty or the willingness to make positive contributions to society, civic skills or the ability to be involved in civil society, politics, and democracy, and social cohesion or a sense of reciprocity or trust and bonding to others. In Pew Research, they ask questions to identify the civic engagement in America, And among the activities that people identified as their civic engagement, signing a petition is there, contacting a national, state, or local government official about an issue was among the top, and also working with fellow citizens to solve a problem in the community. These are among the top 3 activities, and then there are many others. In a publication by Brookings Institution, which is based on an index generated by Civic Health Conference on Citizenship Civic Health Index, there are many activities given as examples of civic engagement. Identifying a problem in the community and working with your neighbors to fix it, planting trees, volunteering to serve as an officer or member of a group in your community, visiting someone else's place of worship, keeping watch on children, painting a mural together, picking up trash together, starting a book club, etc. So you're getting the idea. There are so many examples of these, and I'm going to share these slides with Behzat so you can ask for. You don't have to record it if you fear missing any of this. Volunteering at a museum, volunteering at a public library, volunteering at a community garden, coaching a youth sports team, etc. The list goes on and on. One other example that I'm going to give is a social responsibility project. It's called Family Promise in America. This was started by a Christian lady who one day witnessed homeless families in America. And she wondered, homeless people in America, sometimes they are given shelter by the local governments, like the local community, the mayor's office, the city opens a shelter, and individual homeless people can get shelter there. But she wondered, what do families do? Because those shelters are usually not very good places for families if a family is homeless. And by a family, it might mean father and mother and children. It might mean just a father and children or a mother and children. Okay, that's what is meant by the family. So she thought that the shelters may not be the best places for a family to live, even for a homeless family. So she helped organize many associations, many churches and synagogues and mosques, possibly, I don't remember, in America, to give shelter to families and also food to families who are homeless, who became homeless. In America, there are quite a few people and families who become homeless at some point in their life. So this started and spread around the country, and the ladies from the Peace Islands Institute, which is the New Jersey-based dialogue organization, which is a partner with us, they participated in this effort as the Muslim participants, and they offered warm meals to the homeless families. And they told us that the witnesses, our friends told us there that when the Turkish Muslim ladies offered the warm meal there, it was the highlight of the week, because often they give vegetable meals, warm vegetable meals, which is rare in this soup kitchen, in this program. They usually don't get warm vegetable meals, so that was their favorite of the homeless families. And another project is the Interfaith built by the Habitat for Humanity. You might have heard about this. They build homes for people who cannot afford to have a home themselves. So in this particular project, they bring together different people of different faiths to build homes for the homeless people or for people who cannot afford homes. Okay, so these are all examples of definitions and examples of dialogue and civic engagement. What is the goal of dialogue and civic engagement? It is to prevent or reduce or eliminate ignorance, fear, anger, hatred, enmity, discrimination, and violence, and in their place to put familiarity, knowledge, empathy, acceptance, trust, harmony, and cooperation. I have an anecdote to share here. When I came to America many years ago, I had a friend in the lab that I was working. I was a graduate student, and I had an American friend named Charles. And he was married, he had a family, and they bought a new home. One day, Charles invited me to the housewarming party at his home. So this housewarming party is when the neighbors are invited to celebrate that this family now bought a new home. So I went there as the friend of Charles, and Charles began introducing me to other people at home, in his home. And one of his friends, when Charles introduced me, this is Alp from Turkey, he said, he looked at my face very like baffled. He stood for a second or two silent, and he said, these are the words that came from his mouth. I remember because I was also very surprised. This is what he said, word for word, almost word for word. Oh yeah, you watch all those movies and you think they cannot be all like that. This is what he said. Oh yeah, you watch all those movies and you think they cannot be all like that. So probably he had an image of Turks or Muslims in his mind from the movies that he watched, and he was thinking they cannot be, all bad like that. There must be some good people among them. So when I was introduced to him, these were his first words. Okay. So the purpose of dialogue and engagement is to have a direct experience so that people get to know each other directly, not as a label. Because if you don't know people directly, that means they are just labels to you. I am a Muslim, you're a Hindu, he is a Buddhist, she is a Jewish, and she's a Christian. That's just a label. I am Alp, he is Besat, and she is Anshruta, that is Rakibul, Karim. Well, they are names, but they are just labels, right? But when we get to know each other as humans, then all of a sudden we are humans, and the soul in each of us recognizes the other soul. But for that to happen, there has to be an opportunity for the two souls to recognize each other. Another way to define the goals of dialogue on civil engagement is there is a description called the Pyramid of Hate by the Anti-Defamation League in America. You might have heard about their name. They fight anti-Semitism first, but they also fight other kinds of hate in America. And they define the pyramid of hate as starting with bias, then going to individual acts of prejudice, then going to discrimination, then going to bias-motivated violence, and all the way to genocide. But this is the pyramid of hate. So the goal of the dialogue and civic engagement is to reverse that pyramid. Instead of bias, putting familiarity. Instead of prejudice, putting understanding. Instead of discrimination, putting empathy. Instead of violence, putting acceptance. Instead of genocide, putting trust. So instead of going down this path, helping people go this path. That is the goal of dialogue and civic engagement. Now, all this is good and well, but how do we know that dialogue and civic engagement actually work? How do we know that dialogue and civic engagement actually helps with social peace? We may have individual incidents or situations that we witnessed. So, in our hearts, we know that it should work. And we had experiences where people became friends and people's prejudices changed. So we have individual experiences of it working. But is it sufficient? Because that is not scientific evidence. That is anecdotal evidence. That is what we witnessed. Okay, scientifically, do we know that it works? Okay, so I'm going to give you evidence from 3 domains. One of them is from the surveys, one from the social science research, and one from the neuroscience, brain MRI scans. So in the survey domain, I would like to start with a story of a foundation in America called One Nation Foundation. This foundation was established by a wealthy Christian American business person named George Russell. George Russell, after the event of the tragedy of 9/11, began to think in Europe, Christians within themselves killed each other for almost a century. There was 100-year wars and other wars in Europe where different denominations, different forms of Christianity killed each other. So after 9/11, when George Russell saw the American attitude toward Muslims, he thought, oh my God, I don't want another war between Muslims and Christians to start now. We don't want another 100-year war now between Muslims and Christians. So what can we do? We need to improve the image of Islam in America. So he started this foundation, One Nation Foundation, with the purpose of improving the image of Islam in America. He put, I think, $10 million or something like that into this project. And they began doing different activities. They trained TV anchors, people who talk about the news and other things on TVs. They trained them. They established a website to help Hollywood script writers to better informed about Islam. They sponsored documentaries that depict the friendship between Muslims and Christians. So they did so many things. They trained imams to be better spokespeople from the mosques. But a few years later, they noticed a study by the Pew Research, which asked, what is your opinion of other religions in your country, in America? And they saw that Islam was rated as the lowest in the general American population. And then it is followed by atheists. So Muslims stand at 40%, atheists at 41%, Mormons who see themselves as Christians, obviously, as 48%, not very good. Hindus 50%, Buddhists 53%, so on and so forth. It went on for the other religions. Even for the best of them, for the Jewish religion, it is at 63%. So that means 37% of Americans see Jews in a negative light. So this picture is not very good. So the One Nation Foundation people thought that so our efforts maybe did not make much difference in American attitude toward Islam. Actually, I think that's not the case. If we have time, I'm going to talk about it. But they noticed something else. First of all, the attitude is not the same between Democrats and Republicans, between the liberals and the conservatives. With the Democrats, Mormons are at the bottom, atheists are next, and then Muslims at 47, a little better than the general population. For the Republicans, Muslims are at the bottom, even worse score. Atheists, Hindus, Buddhists are at the bottom, and then evangelical Christians are at the top. So this is not the one that they noticed. What they noticed was the positive information was that when the people are asked, do you know anyone from this group, Muslim, Hindu, Jewish, atheist, whatever, do you know anyone from this group? They noticed that the rating of that group went up at least 10%, somewhere between 7 to 14%. Okay. And this study was done later, again in 2019. Look at the difference between people who don't know anybody from that religion and people who know somebody from that religion. The difference in their opinion is 13% better, 13% better, for Muslims, 8% better, for Mormons, 3% better. So overall, about 10% better for people who know somebody from that religion. So this is our evidence that, survey-based evidence that knowing somebody from religion in general improves the image of that religion at least 10%, if not more. And if they are actually neighbors with somebody from that religion, their image, their perception of that religion is even better. So Dr. Ingrid Mattson, who is a Canadian Muslim, and she was the chair of the Islamic Society of North America for a while, she attended a program at Penn State University, and she was saying that when Americans are asked, okay, what do you want your neighbor to be in terms of their religion? Islam is at the bottom, so they don't want a Muslim neighbor. But when for Americans who actually have a Muslim neighbor, their perception of Islam is the best, is the top. So Americans don't want a Muslim neighbor, but those who have a Muslim neighbor, they are the ones with the highest rating of Islam. So that is another evidence that having direct contact with somebody improves your perception of that other group. So I'm sure there are other studies in Europe and other places that support the same. So this is one piece of evidence from surveys in America that direct experience, dialogue, civic engagement, being neighbor, with other people improves the social peace. Now, the second category of evidence is from social science research, and a good portion of this actually is in India, and some of you might have already heard about this research, and maybe some of you read the paper that I shared by Dr. Ashutosh Varshney, and he studied the conflict in India between Hindus and Muslims. In particular, he looked at the violence in different cities. And as a scientist, of course, they looked at many factors, and they looked at the deaths per population in terms of deaths per 1 million of urban population. So in this graphic, it is just one of the graphics in his research, one of the findings in his research. They plotted how many deaths happened per million population. It is not the absolute number, because if you look at the absolute number, it depends on the city size, right? In a small town, not so many people will die, obviously. In a bigger town, it is likely that more people will die. But when you take the ratio per 1 million population, then you can better compare the numbers. As you can see here, the highest deaths appear in certain states or places, Gujarat, Bihar, Maharashtra. And then in other places, it is almost zero or very low. So they looked at what are the factors that result in very low violence between Hindus and Muslims and very high violence. And their conclusion was that civic engagement is the deciding factor. When there is higher civic engagement between Hindus and Muslims, especially associational civic engagement, there is lower violence. There are fewer deaths or no deaths. When there is no engagement between Hindus and Muslims, then there is higher violence. Okay, and remember, he defined civic engagement. He divided civic engagement into two categories: associational, like institutional, and everyday. He also noticed in his studies that in every country, politicians try to gain political advantage by polarizing people, by speaking to Muslims against Hindus, or by speaking to Hindus against Muslims. Politicians do this in India, they do it in Turkey, they do it in America, they do it in Europe, they do it everywhere. Politicians try to further polarize people for their own political advantage. So what Ashutosh Varshney observed was that associational forms of association or engagement are more resistant to polarization efforts. So when people are engaged under an association, under an institution, they are more resilient against politicians or other people who want to polarize them, who want to make them enemies. So this is another finding which is based on social science research. Again, there are other examples, but I'm only talking about one example here. Now, the third category of evidence comes from neuroscience, from brain scans. The paper that I shared is not actually from neuroscience directly, but there is a researcher, leader in leadership in managerial science, behavioral science. He collected some of these information. So I'm going to share some of the findings or observations there. People who are in neuroscience, they already know about these. Okay. So MRI brain scans show us that in our brain we have different centers, and some centers are more active when we are fearful, when we are in a fight or flight or freeze mode, or when there are other centers that are more active when we are in a relaxed mode or friendly mode, etc. So our brains are constantly gauging whether people are friends or foes. Anyone perceived different from friends in different from the friends group, they trigger a threat response in the brain, which can be actually seen in a scan. It puts our nervous system in fight or flight mode. Actually, I think I'll go into a little detail into these. So let me do that. Okay. So first of all, we have social needs, right? We have a need for a status, to be a place in a society. We want certainty. We want autonomy. We want to relate to other people. We want fairness for ourselves, and there are other social needs. When these social needs are threatened in some way, if we perceive that these social threats, social needs are threatened, then our hypothalamus is activated, amygdala is activated, sympathetic nervous system is activated, and we go into the fight or flight or freeze mode. One interesting observation here is that the perceived threats in the social environment for our social needs are as real, as important, as strong as the physical threats. Like when we face a snake or a tiger or some dangerous animal, our brain reaction is almost the same when we face a social threat. And in some countries like Japan, you know that for social reasons, people commit suicide. So they come to the point of actually perceiving a social situation so bad, they actually take their lives. And it happens in other countries too. Okay. Our brain are constantly trying to identify the other people that we come across or that we observe as friends and foes. And when we see people who are different from us, the default reaction of the brain is to label them as threat. Unless we know them, we have some information about them, the default reaction is to treat them as foe, as a other group, out group, as a potential threat. Another important finding is that when our brain labels other people as friends and foes, our capacity for empathy is less for the stranger group, for the foe group. Okay. In our brains, we have a group of neurons called mirror neurons. These mirror neurons help us relate to other people's feelings. So when we see somebody happy, we feel happiness. When we see somebody sad, we feel sadness. When we see somebody who is in fear, we also feel fear. The mirror neurons in our brains are the biological mechanism for us to do that. But the researchers observed that when we label somebody as a stranger, as different from us, our capacity for empathy is reduced. In other words, we feel their pain less. We feel less of their pain. There was a study that was done in the northeast of America, either at Harvard or Yale or someplace like that. I don't remember the details right now. So the researchers put somebody in the observation room with a knob where they can control the pain that is inflicted on another person in the experiment room. And they said to the observant person who is controlling the knob, or the controller person, they said that this is just an experiment, where everything is under control. We just want to observe certain things. So, just increase the pain slightly more, a little more, until you feel that you cannot increase it anymore. And they observe the effect on the other person. So they observe that when the person controlling the knob, when they see the other person in the room as different from them, they are increasing the pain more than the people who see them similar to themselves. So for people who see as different from them, they are turning the knob more, accepting more pain for the other person. So there are so many experiments that show this point, that we are less sensitive to the pain of people whom we see as different from us, as strangers. And this difference is not only based in race, like black and white or brown or whatever, or religion for that matter, or other kinds of ethnicity within the race. It is not just it is not based on only race. It can be based on other things. In this particular example, the fans of soccer clubs were less sensitive. They had less empathy for the others. So sharing things helps, and not sharing is unhelpful. Another important finding here is that this stereotyping, racial or otherwise, a lot of it is learned. It is through social conditioning. It is how, in our environment, how we are brought up, what are we exposed to. In particular, media images put fear in people's minds, and then therefore they develop a fear-based stereotype about another group. I have a personal anecdote here in America. So one day, because of my current position and responsibilities, we were reaching out to media, and one day we met with one of the producers of Good Morning America. This is a show that airs on ABC in America. You might have seen it, you might have heard about it. Sometimes in movies it is featured, Good Morning America. And I told this person, I asked this person, the producer for Good Morning America, why are there more negative images in media? Because people, they are socially conditioned as they grow up in their society. And an important element of this, it is not just media, but an important element of this is media. What images they see in media. And in media, they see violence, they see attacks, they see fights, they see persecution and other things. They see negative things, threats. So why is that the case? Why are the positive news so little? They take so little portion of the news. And this is what he told me. He said, negative news pay our bills. Negative news pay our bills. So what he's saying is that people pay more attention to threats and conflicts and violence. So as media people, we have to put more conflict and violence and threat on the screen. So we get more people, viewers. So we get more advertisement dollars. So we pay our bills. So they're actually responding to human psychology. Because people pay more attention to threats, to conflicts, and media gives more proportion of their news to these kinds of news. If you just for one day, just for the purpose of studying, look at the news and just label them. Okay, news number, item number 1, item number 2, what category? Is it a threat or conflict, something like that, negative, or is it positive? You will see that the positive news are barely more than 20%, if at all. Okay, some of them may be a little neutral, in the middle, but at least half, 60%, 70% of those are usually negative. That means in our social conditioning about others, we tend to see more negative images of others than positive in the media. So unfortunately, media is not helpful. So, ironically, we might say it is better for a person in terms of peace to watch less news. There are two positive lights in these studies that are very important for us. One of them is whatever we learn, whatever our experiences are, people who are familiar with neuroscience, they will know. That means those experiences will be recorded in our brains as associations, as connections in our neurons. Like a fear experience, a fear image, a threat image, it will be recorded in our brain neurons as links or connections among the neurons. There is going to be a group of neurons which are linked with each other that correspond to that threat perception. This is the wiring. This is called the wiring of the neurons. So the positive news is that rewiring is possible. Just because we learned something doesn't mean we cannot unlearn it. We can unlearn it. How does it happen? You cannot actually cut the connections, but if you replace these connections with other connections and keep the new connections open, alive, then the old connections slowly they recite, and they are weaker and weaker and weaker, and now the new connections are stronger. Let's say in America after 9/11, Muslim image was linked with violence and terrorism. Okay? If Americans see Muslims as doctors, as engineers, as firefighters, as environmental workers, as their neighbors, then Muslim neuron group in the brain will be linked more with the doctor, with the firefighter, with the neighbor, with the environmental activist, with other things. So when the Muslim neuron group is invoked, it's gonna highlight, it's gonna activate these other groups, not the violence group. For the same reason, let's say for a Muslim in India, they might associate Hindus with violence. So in their brain, Hindu and violence are strongly connected. But if they have direct experience with Hindus as neighbors, as their fellow member in a professional association, as their doctor, as something else, if those connections are stronger and they are fed, they are supported, then the link between Hindu and violence in their mind will be loosened. Okay, the same story with Muslims, Buddhists in Myanmar, or blacks and whites in any country where there are blacks and whites. You can imagine, you can expand these examples. So positive news for us, people in the dialogue field, civic engagement field, is the rewiring of the brain is possible. People are not stuck. Our brains are not stuck. We can, because it is plastic, it can be rewired. So how are we going to do this? So that is the second positive news, and that is that direct experience with other people actually help rewire the neurons in the brain. Direct experience actually is stronger than the media images, than what we hear from other people. Okay, so what they say here is that our conditioned fear response can be countered and even reversed through close, positive, interracial contact. Our conditioned fear response can be countered and even reversed through close, positive, interracial contact. Developing relationships with these different others may be one factor that weakens this otherwise strong predisposition. Personal interacting with people from other race groups can be powerful rewiring experience. Okay, so this is the key positive highlight for us in these studies, that this is not, they're not just saying this. When they say this, it is actually based on the brain scans again. So they look at the brains of people who have had a direct experience of the other. And they see that their amygdala, hypothalamus, it is less activated. It is not going into the fear mode. Their brain is staying in the friend mode, in the relaxed mode. Okay. And one other thing that I want to mention, and after that we can switch to your questions. Reframing is necessary for this. Reframing means when you associate a group or a person with a negative concept, the association of this group or person with a different concept, that is the framing. Okay. And to change this framing is also important. So that means the narrative should also change. But for narrative to change, certain things has to happen in life. So direct experience is one of them. Speaking to influential people and facilitating influential people to have direct experiences and to change their framing is also important, because right next after direct experience, in terms of how people form their opinions, right after the direct experience comes the opinions of the trusted third parties, the trusted referential people. Like if you don't know something or somebody or some group, if you don't have a direct experience, then media images, what you hear about them, will form your first opinion. But if there's somebody that you trust, if they share a view about that group, then you will trust that person because you trust that person in general. So after direct experience, the second way to modify people's opinions of a group is to have a trusted third party. So that's another thing that we can do. We can reach to influentials and facilitate them to have a direct experience so that their narrative can change. This is why civic leaders, religious leaders, this is why what they say, what they do is so important. It is not just what they say, what they do is also important. So it is important to reach out to them as well. So that is the third category of evidence showing that it is possible to combat or change negative perceptions and fear attitudes through direct experience, which means dialogue and civic engagement, which facilitate direct experience, are helpful in social peace. Okay. Again, from surveys, people say people have a better attitude about other people whom they know directly. And if they know somebody from a group directly, then their perception of the group changes. This is based on the survey data. And then it is based on the social science research, where people who are engaged in civic engagement, in associations, in professional, hobby, or political or otherwise associations, people who engage in these, there is less violence among them. They have more empathy among them. And then people who have direct experience, their threat image, their threat response changes into friendly response based on the neuroscience evidence. So based on these three areas of evidence, now we can say, as people in the dialogue and civic engagement, we can say that yes, it does help social peace. Dialogue and civic engagement, what we knew in our hearts that it should help, actually is shown to help. Of course, let me go back to something that I wanted to share if we have time. That is, civic engagement and dialogue help improve social peace, but we cannot be naive. Let me put it here so that it's part of the what I mean is that there are people and factors that feed fear. So that means that as people who believe in dialogue and civic engagement and social peace and human fraternity, we have to be vigilant, we have to be intelligent, and we have to recognize that there are people who benefit from fear. There are people who benefit from polarization. Their consciousness level is such that they think that by dominating others, by eliminating others, they will live in a better world for themselves. That's not the case. If they gain materially by eliminating it with a group of people, they are placing a big black mark in their hearts. They are actually destroying their own humanity by oppressing others, by persecuting or killing others. They are actually darkening their hearts, so they cannot live a happy life. But they don't realize that. They are at the consciousness level where they are focused on their physical needs, maybe their survival. They think their survival is under threat. But there are such people, and there are other people who are more intelligent, and they pursue interest very well, knowingly that what they are saying is not true. So to illustrate this, I would like to quote, and I'm going to finish with this. I quote it's either a proverb or something like that. I don't know exactly what it is, but I like it. It says that it is very hard to wake up people who are in deep sleep. It is very hard to wake up people who are in deep sleep, but it is impossible to wake up people who are pretending to sleep. It is hard to wake up people who are deep in sleep, but it's impossible to wake up people who are pretending to sleep. So if somebody is knowingly promoting fear and polarization and hatred, you cannot wake those people up. You have to wake up their audiences. And we cannot be naive about this. We cannot just think, oh, everybody wants this, everybody is, no. People are at different consciousness levels. So we have to design programs, we have to design interactions that will speak to those people at that consciousness level. Because some people at very basic, very low levels, they are at the survival level. Their consciousness is at the survival level. They are in a very fearful stage. You cannot talk about human fraternity and world peace to them. You have to approach them in a different way. And then you have to approach people who are deceiving others. You have to approach their audiences in a different way. You cannot just tell them, oh, this leader that you're listening to is a liar. You cannot say that. It's not going to work. You have to approach them in an intelligent way. So I'd like this to be my last point. In dialogue and in civic engagement, they work. They help with social peace, but they cannot be naive. We have to be intelligent about our circumstances. Okay, so I'd like to finish here and then open up for your questions, and maybe Behzat, you can help moderate that.
Yes, thank you so much, Dr. Aslandogan, for this very interesting presentation. Highlighting the importance of dialogue and civic engagement with various evidences that you have collected. So thank you so much. Now we open the floor for questions and answers and discussion, of course. You just don't have to ask questions. You can also make your comments or observations. So Pragya has raised her hand, and yes, everybody please click on the raise hand before asking the question. Pragya first. Pragya?
Her connection might be...
yes, so in that case, we can go to Sakshi. Sakshi?
Yes, sir. Sir, am I audible?
Yes, you are.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for the session, sir. It was extremely, something that we can learn from a very practical way, but it's something that we are missing out in our daily life, things that we are blinding off ourselves from. But sir, there was something, a doubt and a circumstances which I want to clear. You said that there are people, factors, and circumstances that feed fear, stereotyping, conflicts, and we can't be naive about them. So for me, the circumstances which are created mostly is from the e-cloud. I mean to say the electronic way that is coming all over. Like we're having a meeting on Zoom and everything. Now in the COVID situation, the students like us, we don't interact with people individually. We are interacting people through social medias and through Zoom meetings and etc. So how on a personal level we can overcome this thing? Because somehow we are becoming introvert. I don't know how, but we are becoming introverts. Then how can we cross this bridge and can interact with someone from another community that we don't actually see as an us for ourselves, because of the mindset that has been fed to us through social media and Twitter and everything?
Yes, very good question. It is true, unfortunately, that social media is one of the factors that help feed fear and stereotyping and enmity. So not being able to interact in person is a disadvantage. So whenever possible, we should try to facilitate in-person interaction, but it is also possible to benefit from online interaction. So in the Zoom experience, we are able to see each other, listen to each other. This was a seminar question and ask type of event. So I got to speak more, you speak less, but you can design programs where everybody gets more time to speak, so everybody gets heard more. And as you hear somebody, as you observe somebody, although it is not as good as in-person interaction, it is pretty close. It is still helpful. So facilitating interactions where everybody gets a chance to hear and see others and hear others, that will still be helpful, and we should do that. Now the trick here, or the intelligent part about this, is that you may not be able to organize something like this if the other party is already predisposed to this, or if they have a positive attitude. We call these people usual suspects. So it's easy to organize an event with usual suspects who are already would like to interact and would like to know about others. But people whom we want to reach are actually people who don't want to engage. with other people. You know, Hindus who don't want to engage with Muslims, or Muslims who don't want to engage with Hindus. We want to actually reach those people. So civic engagement actually is valuable in this respect, because in civic engagement, you don't say, oh, let's Hindus and Muslims come together and interact. We don't say that. We say electrical engineers or psychologists, let's come and engage together. But then I am Muslim and you're Hindu, we are both psychologists. And then, you know, in that interaction, in that conversation or activity, then we get to learn about each other. That is the beauty of civic engagement. Our purpose is not to bring Hindus and Muslims and Christians and Buddhists together. No, our purpose is to how to improve, you know, the pollution of our river, or how can we improve the greenery, how can we improve the portion of our land that is reserved for wildlife. How can we do that? And in our reach out efforts, we make an intentional effort to reach out to people who are not like us. I heard an example of this in Philippines. You know that Philippines, the majority are Christian and there is a small Muslim population there. Our friends from Hizmet movement went to Philippines to start a school, and they found a building which was used as an Islamic school before they came there. And in the neighborhood, Christians are the majority. And they knew that this was a Muslim school. So our friends, they did not want to run this as a Muslim school. They wanted to run it as a school open to all. So what they did was they went to Christian families, they knocked their doors. They said, this is the new school administration. This school is going to run in a different way. And we want your children to be also in this school, because we want Muslim and Christian kids to study together, to learn to respect each other. And they actually, this is a private school, it is tuition based. They said for Christian families, we have 50 scholarships. So everybody has to pay tuition, but for 50 or 100 Christian families, you can send your kids for free. So by proactively, by finding funds and funding Christian kids for that school, they facilitated Muslim and Christian kids to study together in that school. And all the families were very happy with that situation. And this happened in other places. In the Balkans, there were also Hizmet schools that held Macedonian, you know, Serbian, Bosnian, Croatian, and other kids studying in the same school, while their parents might be engaged in conflict outside. So we have to be proactive and reach out to these other communities, but not as Muslim-Hindu dialogue, not as Muslim-Hindu interaction, no. We find a cause that's going to be neutral, and people will feel comfortable. How do we improve our neighborhood, or how do we improve our city? How do we improve something about our society? And then in the process, we get to learn about each other.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, Furkan. Next.
Hello, thank you for your presentation, first of all. And I was just gonna ask you about we were already talking about the rewiring, reframing, and just changing their minds, the people minds. And like I mentioned before, I'm also working for the Dialogue Association, but in Slovenia. And what I was gonna ask is, you are already in US, and this is already, what I'm saying is United Nations, you know, then it's kind of already, like, it's already on its name that it's kind of more open to dialogue, you know, like it sounds like that, because you probably already been in Europe, and in Europe, I'm experiencing it for 8 years. There's a big xenophobia. People actually are already very well educated, but still they are a bit afraid of the strangers. Like when they see someone stranger, okay, they just keep it there. You know, they don't want to be friend with them, or it takes maybe 10 to 15 years just to say that we are friends.
Yeah,
that's what I was going to ask, actually, to this rewiring, reframing. It takes, as I see, I haven't been in US before, but I just hear and see the, you know, the news and also the movies and the other things. But when you look at that continent, what would be your suggestions when you're already trying to change people's minds that we can be friends and this kind of things, but you are still on the way and you don't see any clue that they are actually accepting it? I mean, where should we find our power, our inspirations on that path?
Yeah, I understand what you mean. I am like quarter 25% Bosnian by ethnicity. So I know the troubles very well in the Balkans. Our parent generation and their parent generation, it is almost in their genes, the conflicts and the fights over there, the purges, genocidal level killings in the Balkans. It is known there. So it's a tough situation, I know that. But I don't think any country is free from this. In the United States, there's a terrible racial problem. The stereotypes about whites and blacks about each other is really bad, about Hispanics. Even politically, the gap, the divide between the liberals and the conservatives, the Democrats and the Republicans, it's pretty deep. People don't talk to each other. People, change their way not to meet people. It's pretty bad. So although Balkans are, I think, very bad, it's not rosy in the United States either. In Europe, they have their own experiences. So I'm going to repeat that civic engagement is helpful in this sense that when people coming together as engineers or psychologists or doctors or teachers or just neighborhood people or something like that, in a way that will not raise their suspicions. And in the process of engaging, they get to know more Bosnians or Slovenians or Serbians or whatever. That is one thing that can be done to engage more people. The second thing that can be done is in these countries, people who know better, people, again, the influentials, the opinion leaders. It is easier to, it's not easy to reach such people because they are busy and you have to get an appointment. But if you are able to get to them somehow, that is also important for their to take advantage of their influence. When somebody whose opinion is respected, when they say, let's say, I know the Bosnians or Muslims or Slovenians, I had friends, they are not all bad. There are some good people among them. This is a step. Just saying, for instance, that they are not monolithic, they are not all the same. There are people who think like us, or there are people who want to live peacefully. Even this is a step from categorically seeing the other as enemy. We had a trip in 2006 or 7, I think, from America to Turkey. And in this trip, we had the mayor of a small town visiting, coming with us for a trip of 7 to 10 days. And that was the time when there was the cartoon crisis in Denmark. So somebody depicted Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, in a insulting way, and Muslims all around the world were protesting, sometimes violently. They were attacking the embassies of Denmark, burning statues, puppets, etc., burning flags, stoning embassies. So at the end of the trip, we had an evaluation meeting, and everybody evaluated the trip. And so this event, the cartoon crisis, happened just the day before. So this mayor of a small town in America, he came to the meeting, said that last night when I turned on TV, I saw the angry Muslims protesting the cartoon in Denmark with stones or burning or other kinds of assaults. But because I have been to this trip, I know that not all Muslims are like that. Muslims are not a monolithic body. Most Muslims actually respond in a civilized way. These are just a small minority who are doing these violent acts. But I only feel this because I have been to this trip. If I was not on this trip, I would not be able to say this. That is what he said. And he's a person of influence. He is a white Christian Anglo-Saxon American. So he does have influence. He was the mayor of a town in America, and his opinion changed profoundly. How did it change? From seeing Muslims as a monolithic body to coming, no, there is diversity among them. They are not all like that. Even just saying they are not all like that, this is a step toward the the peace, social peace. So if it is possible to find the influentials, opinion leaders, and if possible to invite them to a trip to another country where they are exposed to different cultures and ethnicities and religions. You can also think about these things. I know it's a tough situation. It's not easy, but don't think that it is by numbers. It is not that when 51% of Slovenia thinks this way, things are going to happen. It doesn't work that way. Usually, there are fewer people who are more influential in the society, and many other people follow them. So if you are small in numbers, if your resources are very small, your first priority could be people, opinion leaders.
Thank you. Next is Rajan. But Rajan, please turn on your camera for asking the question.
Yeah, sure. Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. First of all, I express my deep respect for your intention that you are very much involved with the positivity of dialogue. Sir, basically, I want to present some of the challenges which I also faces when I try to propose that there are some positive aspect of dialogue. One is that, the whole lecture, when you delivered it, the foundation of your lecture was religion, that your truth begin with the religion, that religion is a basic need or basic necessity of humanity. And then we have to move further. Like when we have dialogue, we do not need to compromise religion. It is the thing you told about the dialogue. So first of all, we have to know whether religion is a dominating factor in the human world order, present human world order or not. If it is not, then it is unnecessary to talk about religion as a basic truth in the society. Recently, I was reading the sociology of religion, the sacred canopy of Peter L. Berger. So he tells that in the modern society, talking about religion as a dominating institution or factor is basically a senseless thing. In the modern time, we have to talk about something foundational which can make our life more meaningful. And that we all know is capitalism or the economic development of the humanity. So what do you think on this? That what should be the fundamental thing of human world order? Should it be religion or should it be economic development? This is the first challenge. And second, I think is that your evidence, the evidence you proposed seems, less trustworthy for me, because I'm a philosophy scholar. So we are much more concerned about the arguments and little bit skeptic about the, surveys which you propose. So when we talk about the surveys, so I do not find any big, public model or any particular society which have, developed itself out of dialogue, and we have found a kind of peaceful coexistence. So I would like to ask you any big, model, like any society, particular society, which can be shown that this society is a very specific example that has developed out of dialogue in that manner. Because I am asking this question in that manner, when we have dialogue, there is a binary in our mind. We think in terms of ideology, we think in terms of gender, we think in terms of religion, different religion and so on. So when we think in terms of ideologies, often dialogues do not work, and we often work in the selfish manner. So shouldn't we taken this factor into mind or not? So these are some of the challenges which I think. And one solution I can propose from my side is that, man is a meaningful creature. As long as there is a meaning in their life, they are peaceful. The moment they lose the meaning in their life, most of the things seems quite chaotic, whether it is personal relationship or it is a social relationship or it is a religious relationship. The moment we lose the meaning in life, most of the things seems chaotic. So talking about, things in terms of manner, what would you say? Like, this is the thing I wanted to say. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Those are very well thought comments or questions. With your first point, I gave more examples from religion, not because that I believe that in the modern society, religion is a dominant driving force. I give more examples from religion because in many societies, maybe not in the Western Europe, but in other societies, religion is one of the factors that is abused most. It is not that religion actually is the driving force there, but religion is instrumentalized. It is used to hide behind. And I actually agree with you that the driving force is actually more is different. It has to do with human psychology. It has to do with human sociology, politics, economy. I agree with that. It has to do with about the primary drives of human behavior. But religion may be the surface. So that's why I gave religions from examples from religion. Sometimes I say something my friends have difficulty understanding. I say the same thing as you said. We give religion too much credit for human behavior. That is, ideally, religions aim at shaping human behavior, but is human behavior really shaped by religion? In reality, is that the case? I don't believe so. I think only for people who are really devout, religion is their driving force. For many other people who are seemingly religious, the religion is not their driving force. Other factors are their driving force. So I kind of agree with you. I don't mean to say that we should focus on religion. No, it is sometimes religion. It is sometimes ethnicity. It is sometimes the economic class, worker class versus capital owner class. Sometimes it is something else. If you go to Africa, you will see that the tribal connections are very important. Rather than religion, the tribal connection, which line you come up, that is very important. It's not the only factor, it's not the top factor, but it's a very important factor. If you go to the Middle East, the Arabic-speaking countries, the tribal connection, again, is very important. So it is, I think, if I were to generalize it, I think it's about human consciousness. At what level are you operating for any human? At what level of consciousness are they operating? Are they operating at the basic needs level, at the tribal belonging, group belonging, in-group versus out-group level, or are they behaving at a higher level? Unfortunately, people who are at a higher consciousness level are smaller in number in humanity, in the world. So I think as people who believe in dialogue and civic engagement, our goal should be to help increase the consciousness level of humanity so that we realize that we are, first of all, one family, we live on the same planet, and if there is no peace and tranquility for all humanity, ultimately we cannot be happy and tranquil. So I believe in that. Now, in terms of your second question was, what should be, can you repeat your second one?
Sure.
What should be
the region you provided, the evidences you provided seems less satisfactory for me. I want any public model, any public society or a country where dialogue has produced
okay.
kind of peace.
Yeah, I can respond to that. So sometimes we look at the big picture and we can get demoralized. We can lose hope, but we should not do that, because you may like or not like her, but I like one of the phrases of Mother Teresa. I cannot do big things, but I can do small things with a big heart or big passion. So if you focus on the society, you will lose hope. You will go into desperation. You will not find any single country who have solved this problem. You will not find that. But if you look at smaller cases, smaller regions, smaller communities, you will see success stories. Let me give you one. In Turkey, majority is Muslim, 99% is Muslim. There is less than 1% Christians. In the Ottoman Empire, that was not the case. There was a higher number of Christians, but in the Turkish Republic, many Christians left or were forced to leave. So less than 1% Christian. Although in Ottoman Empire, there were relatively peaceful interfaith relations, in the modern Turkey, the founders felt that the foreign powers were intervening in the affairs of the country by using the religious minorities as a justification. So they wanted to minimize the non-Muslim minorities. So they did a population exchange with Greece. Many Christians went to Greece, and Muslims came from Greece to Turkey. Anyway, so now there is a tiny Christian population in Turkey who are not comfortable. They may be labeled, they cannot raise in the government. They are known, their names and history is known. So they don't have a comfortable, free living in the society. So in the 90s, Fethullah Gulen, the kind of the originator of the Hizmet movement, he started an interfaith initiative, and they organized activities with these Christian leaders, Armenian, Orthodox, Catholic, Assyrian leaders. They shook hands, they gave panel talks or other events. They had dinners together, symbolic events. But this example in the 90s was seen as positively in the general society. After these events, the government's Directorate of Religious Affairs actually established an Office for Interfaith Dialogue. And one of the leaders, a few years later, said this. I think it was the either Greek Orthodox or the Assyrian leader. He said this: some years ago, on the street, nobody would look at our face. But thanks to these dialogue efforts now, during the Ramadan, we get so many invitations, we don't find time to respond to all of them. So during a brief period, for maybe 5 years, 10 years in Turkey, the Christian minorities in the society felt better and their situation improved. The country did not solve its problem. Unfortunately, it cycled back into polarization, and the Christian image is still very bad. So does it mean it is unsuccessful? No. There was a partial temporary success if Hizmet movement is not there anymore institutionally, but it was a success nevertheless. And when you look at smaller scale, you will see that there are many cases of success like this. Also, success is sometimes prevention of violence, prevention of atrocities. If you look at it that way, you can also find many success stories. I know one in Rwanda, when there was the Hutu-Tutsi genocide situation. So the Tutsis were killed at the beginning of the genocide. Of course, before that, Tutsis were in the government, which is oppressing the Hutu population, right? So it's a cyclic thing. So when the Hutus were killing Tutsis, there is a group of Tutsis who sought refuge in a mosque in Rwanda. There's a small Muslim community, and the Muslims said that our Prophet's legacy, peace upon him, is that when somebody seeks refuge in our place of worship, we defend them at the expense of our life, at the threat of our life. So they defended them. They told the Hutus, to get to the Tutsis, you have to go through us. And that group of Tutsis were saved from being killed. So is that a success or not? For those people, they survived. That is a success. But the country of Rwanda did not solve their problem of inter-ethnic or inter-tribal violence. So my perspective is that there may not be a society level success, but at the local, smaller level, there is success, and we should not focus on the society level success, otherwise we will lose hope.
Thank you. Now, Pragya, then Saim. Pragya, please go ahead.
Yes. What I wanted to really know is that how do we create these resilience? For example, I did this this small study on effect of South Asia and effect of 9/11 in South Asia and South Asia.
You
minority.
Sorry.
And they were almost as similar to Jews, and they were actually almost invisible. Nobody actually noticed that they were there, etc. And they were seen as, like you said, doctors and neighbors. A similar situation happened, even in Kashmir, where Kashmiri Hindus, who were a minority, were living absolutely, the same language, the same food. They used to share, partake into each other's festivals with the Kashmiri Muslims. Yet after 9/11, we saw that there was a drastic change in their perception. And similarly, in when in Kashmiri Muslims, when they got radicalized by politically, then from across the border, then there were they started seeing Kashmiri Hindus as Indian agents. So there was this So what you're talking about already existed at some level, and yet it was not resilient enough to take the blow. It just came crashing out like a pack of cards. So what can we do to sort of, make these relationships or these associations or interactions or dialogue more resilient? Is something I want to ask.
Yeah, I think Behzat, last year when we did this seminar, we had similar questions.
Yes, we had similar questions last year too.
What you said, Pragya, I think, was it Furkan? In the Balkans, he said
Furkan.
similar things, and he could say similar things. If you were to go to Africa, probably people might say similar things. Yes, we have local success, we have community-based improvement, but then something comes and then it destroys everything. Some big storm comes, and then all those little things that we built, they are destroyed. For success at the bigger level, if you consider human history, there are many more people living in relative peace today in the modern world than history. The concept of citizenship, the concept of fundamental human rights. Humanity came together in 1948 after the experience of the World War II and decided that we're going to do our best to guarantee these fundamental rights. So they made the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. They formed the United Nations. If you look at the history of the United States, it began with slavery. Only landowner white people could vote. And from there, it came to a place where everybody can vote. At least on the paper, blacks and whites have the same rights. In terms of the treatment, blacks are not slaves anymore. There is still discrimination and racism, but it is much better than a whole community of blacks serving as slaves. So humanity does proceed. Humanity does improve, but in a cyclic manner. And sometimes, disasters teach people a lesson. Big disasters teach bigger groups of people a lesson. So we should not lose hope about humanity, but we should not expect humanity to make a big leap. And definitely with our efforts, with a group of 50, 60 people or 100 people, or even 1,000 people, even 1 million people, humanity is not gonna make a big leap. So what we're trying to do is just to do our part to improve a small part of this humanity, to make a small contribution with the hope that it will become part of a bigger evolution of humanity. And for this, I share my story and kind of a folklore kind of story, which is partially based on the Quran and maybe other scriptures. So in this story, Prophet Abraham, the first part is related in the Quran, so we as Muslims we believe it is true. Prophet Abraham was put into fire by Nimrod, the authoritarian leader of his land, for spreading monotheism. And his community at that time were star worshippers. They believed in certain stars as gods. So Abraham was put into fire, and this portion is in the Quran, but the rest is not in the Quran. So in the second part, a bird comes to Abraham when he is in fire, and the bird drops just a tiny little bit of water from its beak or something else into the water. And Abraham says, "Oh, bird, you know that this little bit of water is not going to change the situation, this big fire." The bird says, "I know that, I realize that, but I want the world to know that I am on your side." So I think this should be our guiding principle. We won't be able to change India or United States, but we will change a small neighborhood. We will change 5 people's minds, maybe we will help change. Maybe we will evolve. We are not outside of this group. We also have our own evolution. So we make a contribution, first of all, to our own evolution and to the evolution of 5 people, 10 people. That is our duty. What is the alternative? Okay, this doesn't work, then I'm going to just go about living without making a contribution. Is that the alternative? But if there is something better to do, of course we can do that. We should just do what we believe is the best to do.
Thank you.
Next is Saim. Saim, you. Yes.
Yes. My question was similar to a couple of questions asked earlier, but then I will straight away continue with where sir left, the answer that sir just left. Sir, if you try to, engage on the level of civil engagement, as you said, there are engineers talking to each other and workplace employees talking to each other. But then there's something happens like the Indian-Pakistan match, cricket match occurs, which is inevitable, it happen. And then when it happens, actually the workplace situation changes. Because if you're a Muslim, you have to automatically take some side. You cannot say, I don't want to watch cricket and move on. I would take some side. And if by stroke of bad luck, you get to say that you are supporting a certain country, things change. And these things are so much grounded in the collective memory that they cannot be changed, they cannot be challenged, and so when this event occurs, all that civic engagement is undone. Now the basic drive behind the India Pakistan match is TRP, and so is about politics. The basic driving principle is capital and profits of a limited people at the price of the collective hatred that is being propagated. So when hate is being propagated through economy, can socialism act as a response to this capitalized hate? Can socialism be that binding force which can provide a longer civic engagement, a more non-workplace oriented, a more personal civic engagement? Can socialists as a collective force be more united and be more mm, sort of interactive and dialogic with each other, and perhaps this problem of an impersonal civic engagement, that is workplace civic engagement?
Okay, I think that's an excellent suggestion or a question. I think one of the earlier people who asked the question, maybe they meant that. So I'm understanding your question as maybe the foundations of social peace is more in the economic model than people interactions, people relationships. So there may definitely be truth in that. I'm not against that idea. As we know, both in America, in Western Europe, in other countries, there has been moving away from strict capitalist model. For those countries which started as a capitalist model, there has been a move away from strict capitalism and strict individualism, more toward a socialist model of society or economy or state society relationships. I think in terms of the economic model, it is possible to find models that are more conducive to broader social peace. So I definitely believe that the economic model and the way state works, the way state interacts with the society, definitely the model has a big place to play there. I'm definitely agreeing with that. What I'm going to add to this is that for socialism, I don't believe in strict capitalism anyway, but some form of capitalism, private ownership and entrepreneurship and private enterprise, so on and so forth, I believe there's virtue there too. Regardless of what the model is, ultimately, what will take the model to success is human consciousness. You build a country or society based on socialism with low level of consciousness, socialism will drive that, that country will be driven to the same abyss. So human consciousness, I think, it is so much more important than the model. Let me give you an anecdotal example to illustrate. This is just illustration, not proving or not trying to show that it is right or wrong. Again, based on my experience, please excuse the particularity, but in Turkish Republic, there is a constitution. It was founded in 1923 with a constitution. And in the constitution, it is declared that this is a secular state based on rule of law. It's a republic, so on and so forth. Okay, and this constitution was modified a couple of times, but at the essence of the republic, the nature of the republic did not change. When you look at the Supreme Court or Constitutional Court decisions, for instance, there was a issue where covered Muslim girls, can they go to college or not, including private colleges. At some point, the Constitutional Court decided that this is against the secular nature of the republic. What does a girl going to college have to do with the nature of the regime? So the Constitutional Court of the country decided that a girl, covered Muslim girl, going to college is against the secular nature of the republic. And then later on, the Constitutional Court members changed. The same Constitutional Court decided, no, it's okay. Everybody can go to college the way they dress. So the model is the same. Nature of the republic is the same. People changed, their mindset changed, their decision changed. Right? So this is what I mean. You know, a more socialist model may serve social peace better, and it definitely has a role to play, but it is not independent of human consciousness. You know, what starts as a capitalism, it is a humane, if it is made humane capitalism, it is not, you know, cutthroat capitalism, that can also serve with the right level of consciousness. So our goal should be, what I mean by that is, first of all, realization that we are all connected, realization that we are a member of the human family, realization that in every human there is a something divine, there is a soul. You know, if in socialism you forget this, 20 years later, 30 years later, you will end up with disaster. So that's what I believe.
Yes, and next is Nazgul. Nazgul, please turn on your camera.
Yes, hello again. I'm sorry, I cannot turn because it's very slow connection. I'm just trying to keep it stable. So I apologize. My question, I don't know if it's the question or if it is just my reflection from the whole discussion, which was very, very enriching about the dialogue. And I think that we should keep dialogue and there should not be any hopelessness. If it doesn't work in some areas, it doesn't mean that it will not work in that area in the future. So, and regarding the what Dr. Aslandogan said about the fear, I agree that most of the problems with conflicts and other problems, wars, it's start with the fear, human fear. What is fear? Fear when we feel fear, when we don't know. When we don't have enough information, right? So just like an example with this hijab, with a girl who wore hijab, yeah? Probably the court changed their decision based on the more expanded information about the Muslim students, about this concrete girl who wore hijab. So I think that nowadays in dialogue institutions, one of the important things now is also psychology, because all these fears is also come from low esteem, less self-love, less self-value, you know, and if we help people to be more love themselves first. If you love yourself, then you will definitely love other human being, right? So that is my I'm thinking loud, just my thoughts that came from this very interesting discussion. And I just wanted to share one small example from Kyrgyzstan after the COVID, which was real disaster also for Kyrgyzstan. And when Dr. Aslandogan mentioned that in disaster sometimes help to to build these dialogues between different groups. So it happened in Kyrgyzstan when all the volunteers united in a big group, and these volunteers came from different social stratas, from various groups, sometimes opponent groups, and they were united by one common goal, to combat this disease, right? And in this process, when we were delivering medicines to hospitals, sharing food and other things, people from even opponent groups started to learn about each other. And I think in dialogue, it's not, along with knowing, along with building common grounds, it's also important to learn diversities, you know, and how to say, to learn that different, it doesn't mean bad, you know. We learned many new things about different groups, sometimes opponent, you know, groups. What I'm saying is that there is always a way for human being to find a way to the other human being if we have a burning desire.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, I'm not sure if you said that, but maybe I understood that way. Human psychology is a very, very important element here. And it is actually the driving force behind many actions, behavior. Religion is, of course, expected to work on the human psychology and improve human consciousness and help humanity evolve, or the person evolve. And our point here is that, or our point is not that dialogue and civic engagement is the silver bullet. You know, in America, in English, there's this term silver bullet, that is, you know, you hit something with the silver bullet and it is done, it is gone.
Mm-hmm,
no,
mm-hmm.
We are not saying that. When I said we cannot be naive, maybe, you know, I did not make myself clear. I'm gonna put it here. Ignorance, not knowing each other correctly, it is not the only factor, it is one factor. So the work of the dialogue and civic engagement is to eliminate the ignorance factor from the conflict situation, from the polarization. But it is not the only factor. I think the two previous questions, they also hinted at that. If there are economic injustices, if there are other injustices, if there is oppression in the society, you cannot solve it just by dialogue. And we are not saying that at all. There are economic issues that need to be addressed. There are other social issues that need to be addressed. There has to be work done to address all of them. You know, in the Palestinian-Israel situation, you know, if you bring Palestinians and Jews together and have dialogue, that's not gonna, by itself, it's not gonna solve the situation, because there are other important structural elements, dynamic elements there. If you don't address those, just by dialogue, you're not gonna solve the situation. That's being naive. That's what I said. We cannot ignore the other dynamics, the other factors that are affecting the fear or conflict or violent situation. So I'm going to add this to my slides. Economic factors, models, injustices, history of oppression or conflict, ... These are all important elements and should be addressed on their own. So maybe we can say that dialogue and civic engagement help with these factors indirectly. In other words, let's say a Hindu or Muslim doesn't know the experience of the other, the injustices that are suffered by the other, or let's say a capitalist and a worker. Maybe they don't feel the suffering and the pain of the other. If it is possible to have them experience this, maybe they will become part of the change to have a better, more just economic model. So dialogue and civic engagement will be a helper factor for other elements, for other factors that affect social peace. So we are not saying at all that you can achieve social peace just by dialogue and civic engagement. You have to deal with everything that has an influence on the situation.
Great, thank you. So we have almost run out of time, and I don't see anybody else requesting to ask a question or make a comment. If there's maybe one more question we can take, if there's somebody who wants to speak.
Yeah, as we wait on that, I just wanted to maybe give another example of why human consciousness is at the center of this, like respect for the fundamental human rights, respect for the dignity in every human in their soul, not in their behavior, but the dignity of their soul. This is at the center. You might remember in the in the Soviet days, the idea was that everybody is equal and we own everything, so on and so forth. So later on, we saw the abuses in the form of bribery. The whole system began to work on bribery because the salaries are not sufficient to, to make a living. People get bribery, and then the Politburo members almost becoming like a privileged class, and all kinds of abuses. Again, when you neglect the human consciousness, then the best model is going to lead into disaster. But that doesn't mean you should not think about the model. Model is definitely important, but every model is only as good as the consciousness, human consciousness that is running it.
We have a question in the chat box by Ravi Dubey. Ravi, why don't you ask it yourself? Are you there? Okay, anyway, I'll go ahead and read it. He says, if being neighbor makes good perspective and peace, then why is Russia on the path of war with Ukraine and Israel, Middle East countries? That's his question.
Yeah, I think, by being neighbor, what we mean is human-to-human interaction. So we are not talking about countries being neighbor. Neighbor countries usually have a lot of trouble. So human neighborhood doesn't translate to country neighborhood. What we mean is that are people able to have a human experience with the other, transcending the labels, right? So at the border of Russia and Ukraine, one side is Russia, the other side is Ukraine. They are labels. You are Ukrainian, I am Russian. That's labels. In the local neighborhood, I'm from this neighborhood, you're from that neighborhood. Those are labels. Or I'm from this ethnicity, or from this working class or economic class. So those are just labels. What we want to achieve is for people to have a human experience, for people to look at each other with the eye, to see the other's behavior, to experience the other's behavior. This is what we're looking at. And maybe I gave this quote in another seminar, maybe last year. Rumi, you might have heard of Rumi, the spiritual poet who lived in modern-day Turkey, but he was born in, I think what is now, it's not Kyrgyzstan, is it Uzbekistan? I think he was born in what is today Uzbekistan, and then migrated to Syria and then to Turkey, his family. So Rumi says that when two humans come together and look at each other, it is two human souls who are looking at each other through the window of the eye. And two humans come together and look at each other, it is two human souls, or two souls, looking at each other through the eye, through the window of the eye. So this is what we mean by neighborhood. Unfortunately, it doesn't translate to country neighborhoods.
Right. Now, Charu has a question. Charu, please be very precise and ask
Yes, thank you, sir, for such an optimistic lecture, I say. And I could actually relate to what you meant by civic engagement and how it can stimulate. However, human consciousness was at the central of the entire lecture. So it's just how can we sustain this human consciousness in this direction? Is it through the the micro level, the individual level contribution we can make, or is it something else for you? That's like the basic brief idea.
So I'm looking at this in two angles. The first angle is, as an individual, we have only limited influence, and as a group, we have a small influence. But we are able to influence the experience of one individual or small group of individual, and that may be enough for us, because that's what we can do. That's one angle. The other angle is you don't know in the greater scheme of things what your actions will lead to ultimately, right? If you look at the people who did great things for their nation, look at Gandhi or George Washington or whoever, people, Nelson Mandela, people who showed leadership, who made a contribution that is visible, right? When you read their history, you see that they were influenced by other examples, by other people, and sometimes literary works. When you read those people's lives, they see that they were influenced by this or that. Some of them were influenced by one action that changed their lives, right? So with our actions, we don't know what will be the ultimate result, and we should not be concerned about that. If we in our hearts, if we believe that we are doing the right thing, it is possible that 2 generations later, it's gonna maybe produce a leader in India who's gonna make a reform in India that's gonna improve the lives of all Indians. That may or may not be related to our action, but it is possible, because this is how it happened in history. So I have these 2 angles. One, we are able to make a small change with a lot of passion, improve the lives of a small number of people. Secondly, there are the indirect consequences that maybe come from our actions.
Right, great. In that case, thank you so much, Dr. Aslandogan. With this, we come to the end of our session today. We, of course, heard from you that the presentation was very good, and then we also had a very nice, healthy discussion with the...
Let's call it a civilized grilling, which is very valuable, because as I said at the beginning, we all learned. I'm not here to teach. I'm here to share something that I learned and to learn from you. And I think I learned from you some very important things today. So I thank you for that.
Thank you. Thank you all the participants for your questions and comments, and for being with us today. So thank you all. Bye-bye. Have a great day. And have a great night to all of you.
Thank you. And I'm going to send you the presentation, Behzat, so anybody interested can get it from there.
I will share it with all the participants.
Stay healthy and in peace.